Take two.
Welcome everyone to the Voice of Terminus show, number 60. I'm joined today, as usual, with my regular hosts, Lexus. Say hello, Lex.
Hello.
Say hello, Josh.
Hey guys.
And we're joined today with somebody special. You all know him from the forums as Bazgrim. We're here to do a player Q&A with this gentleman, talk a bit about Pantheon and everything. But before we get into all that, tell us a bit about your personal background, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. So I am 23 years old. I live in New Hampshire in the U.S. and I have a day job in the security industry, but pretty much when I'm not working, I am playing some sort of video game.
Nice.
Oh, yeah. So tell us a bit about your gaming background.
Yeah, so I was actually about 6 years old when I was first introduced to EverQuest. Believe it or not, it was my grandmother that introduced me to the game. And now, like, we all hear about how people's first exposure to EverQuest is really memorable, and rightfully so, but you could imagine as this, like, as a 6-year-old kid that's, like, barely even getting used to the real world, to then find out that there's this whole new virtual world called Norath. It's like mind-blowing is not even the sufficient way to describe it, you know? It just consumed my mind. And right, so, you know, even when I would log out, my mind would still be there in Norath. And you know, I played EQ through the majority of my formative years, so looking back at it now, it really had a significant impact, not just as me as a gamer, but also me as a person, you know, because that's where I learned how to type, you know, and so I'm in there as the 6-year-old kid learning these big words like apprehensive and indifferent and like thaumaturgist, you know, so, and I actually specifically remember my grandmother instilling in me basic online etiquette, which also applies to real life, you know, stuff like don't beg and don't steal and just other stuff like that so that people don't hate you, because you need to form those connections with people and so that they help you to move forward in EQ and in real life, of course. So the nice thing is that I do come from a gaming family, so there were several of us that would all play EQ together, and we did so for many years, and it was a lot of fun. And I have a... So
you never had to actually look for group, did you?
No, not really. I mean, there were 7 of us probably that would all run together.
Right.
Yeah, it was.
I don't even think I have 7 friends.
You know, it was awesome, and like even instead of like exchanging Christmas gifts in real life, well, we would still exchange Christmas gifts in real life, but in addition to that, you know, I'd wake up on Christmas morning and there'd be like new gear on my EverQuest character already, you know, because they would like, you know, so I love that stuff. It was great. So
that's awesome.
It's a great.
So of course, you know, as things happen though, over the years, we just kind of, you know, faded out as other like real life responsibilities or other games would take up more of our time. That's just how it goes. So
yeah.
I mean, every once in a while, even to this day, some of us will still log back in, but it's mostly for the sake of nostalgia. So I'd say probably around 12 or 13, I started just looking at other MMOs, and I've played pretty much everything there is out there, more than I can even remember. Yeah, and they were each interesting in their own way, but I would always measure them up against the standard of EverQuest, and of course nothing could just live up to that. So I just kind of bounced around from game to game until I went to college, and that was when I rediscovered actually a game that I had played quite a bit in high school, which was Dungeons and Dragons Online, or DDO.
Yeah.
And something just clicked, and I got hooked all over again on that game. And of course, Lex. And of course, now that I was in college, I had more control over like how I spent my time and my money. So I just went for it. And so over the next 4 years, I played that game almost nonstop. I joined a guild. I made a lot of great friends, some of which I still keep in touch with to this day, even outside the game.
Great.
And yeah, so it was a long but really incredible journey, actually, because through a lot of like hard work and overtime, I'm rising up the ranks in my guild, and before it, I know it, I'm doing all these like server firsts and breaking world records and just having the time of my life.
Brilliant.
And it was, again, gaming taught me more of these life lessons, because it was there in DDO that it really clicked for the first time that I was like, okay, if I pour all my time and my effort and my passion into this one thing, then I can be somebody that, accomplishes really great things, and it feels really good. And that, like, it just finally made sense. And it was there that I also developed, more like leadership and communication skills, stuff that I like use on my regular job. It's stuff that I learned in gaming, because I eventually ended up leading the guild that I was in, but I spent most of the time as the head officer, like the second in command position. So yeah. I was the one that was in charge of organizing and leading raids, and we would raid like 5 days a week. So just developing, more strategies and stuff like that. It was a lot of fun. But then again, of course, eventually the time came to move on. So after college, I went back to just kind of bouncing around from game to game. I've played pretty much every genre, actually, of online gaming, so like StarCraft 2 and Overwatch and Heroes of the Storm, Hearthstone, Skyrim, pretty much everything. But that's pretty much how I got to where I am now.
Cool.
Okay, great. So what really got you interested in Pantheon? You've jumped from the MMOs to first-person shooters. What's grabbing you about Pantheon?
Well, to be honest, I think it's actually one of the biggest things is the opportunity to be able to get involved so early in the development process. I think it was in like late 2015 that I think I actually saw an ad for Pantheon on Facebook, and I looked into it a little bit. I, of course, recognized Brad McQuaid's name from EverQuest, and I thought it was interesting that he was making a new game, and it looked pretty good. But at the time, my focus was actually on EverQuest Next, because at the time it seemed a little bit more promising, and I wanted to stay within the franchise. Yeah. But then, of course, long story short, that ended up crashing and burning pretty miserably. But then it was actually pretty amazing. I don't know if this was like pure coincidence or a really brilliant PR move, but like on March 11th, 2016, SOE announced that EQN was ceasing the development. But then the very next day, March 12th, is when VR streams gameplay of Pantheon live on Twitch for the first time. And I felt like they kind of took all of us, like EQ and orphans that had just had our, hopes and dreams crushed before our very eyes. Yeah. Exactly, shattered. But then VR comes in and like they swoop in, take us under their wing, and show us into this new world that's really bigger and better.
There's a lot,
Yeah.
lot of theories out there, plenty out there to how this came about.
Yeah.
Coincidence or not?
Yeah, I don't know.
Everyone out there for them to decide themselves if it's
Either way, it's working though.
Yeah.
Oh, great. And then the exciting things for you in Pantheon itself? What is pricking your interest?
Well, like I said, this is actually like the earliest I've ever been able to get involved in a game. I've done some beta testing for a few other MMOs like Neverwinter and a few others like that.
Yeah.
But to really have the opportunity to be one of the first people to jump into the game, you know, of course, it would be cool to be one of the first people like outside of the VR to, you know, lay your eyes on something. But even more so than that, to jump into the game and really have no idea where I am, and then realize that everybody else around me is in the same boat and nobody knows what we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, to then have that feeling of like being lost, but then work together almost as like pioneers to blaze the trail for, you know, years of more players to come, to try to, you know, work through all the problem solving and the obstacles for tackling like bosses and stuff for the first time. So I think that's what's probably got me the most excited.
I think at the end, I think that's for most of us actually, is the fact that it's something new. It's related. We've played it. We've seen it all before. But it's you know, Pantheon is its own game in itself. And I think for most of us inside, the most exciting thing is to actually get into a new MMO that's completely new to us, completely strange. We have to go out and seek new friends and achieve all these goals. I think that's for everybody. What about you, Josh?
Yeah, I agree. I think going around that corner, seeing what's that hole in the ground, going to try and discover that, and suddenly it opens up into a big subterranean area. You know, things like that, discovering all those things for the first time, that wonder that you're having. So I think it's a great thing.
Yeah.
So we all know that your name's well known throughout the community, especially on the forums. So you're very active in the forums. What would be the top 3 community posts that stood out the most for you, and why?
That's a really good question. Well, in no particular order, the first one that comes to mind would definitely be the Pantheon memes thread, which was started by Todd, because simply it's just hilarious. Like, even for people that may not be too familiar with Pantheon, even just gamers in general, it's like pee your pants funny. So that would be the first one. The next one would actually probably be the it's called Terraform in Pantheon by Sacred, I think was the one that started it. I've always been obsessed with the story of Terraform. So for anybody that doesn't know, Terraform was this dragon in EverQuest that was the offspring of a forbidden relationship between 2 dragons of a forbidden color, like fire and ice. And this resulted in Terraform being this prismatic dragon of basically unimaginable power, and he was generally considered to be unkillable and omnipotent. So the other dragons of Norath correctly viewed him as a threat because he also had a really bad temper, and so they banded together and managed to subdue Terraform into this like indefinite slumber and lock him away in a tomb. And I'll let Sacred's thread tell the rest of the story, but it brings up this really interesting discussion about the possibility of maybe something like that happening in Pantheon. Maybe not the exact same thing, of course, with this unkillable dragon, because if I remember correctly, World of Warcraft actually did something similar with their Cataclysm expansion with Deathwing. That was this unkillable dragon that just wreaks havoc on the world. So I think personally, if VR did that again, I would at least kind of be a little bit like, okay, this has kind of already been done before. But that doesn't necessarily mean there couldn't be something of equally epic proportions that just like these game-defining moments that are just once in a lifetime and unforgettable. I think if something like that happened in Pantheon, that would just be awesome. So, and then the other one would be Defining the Magic of EverQuest by Crixus. This was actually mentioned in the February newsletter by Hakanu in his interview, but it's worth mentioning again because it's just a really, he just really brilliantly describes why EverQuest was so special to those of us that played it and why we all remember it so well. So yeah, if you haven't read that thread yet, or even if you have never played EverQuest, it's worth a read because it's just really well said.
Great. Just to also mention, I think in World of Warcraft, I think one of the events that they had was, I think people were turning into zombies, an epidemic or a plague that was happening, and they basically spread throughout certain realms so quickly, and the guys didn't really even factor that into the whole thing. So these unexplained events that really happen in the game is things that are spoken about for 5, 6, 7, 8 years on in the future.
Right. Yeah, it's usually the things that the devs actually don't plan for that are the things that just live on, as these legendary stories in the genre, that everybody hears about. So
exactly.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's always the unexpected that makes things interesting.
Yeah.
Right.
So, what class and race are you likely to pick, and why?
I'll almost definitely start off as a dwarf cleric. I've had a lot of fun with that combination in other games, including DDO. But the dwarves in Terminus actually seem particularly interesting. When reading through the lore, it seems like they're actually made of this like magical combination of ice and stone, and I think that has a lot of really interesting implications as far as gameplay goes, and like resistances and immunities and stuff like that. And I can only assume that they'll have a lot of hit points too, which is good because I don't like to die. And I really like, traditional dwarven architecture, stuff like that, the fortresses that they build into the mountains, and how they're small in stature but big in personality. I'm not like a huge role player, but I definitely appreciate that aspect of it. And then a cleric, because I just thrive in that healing role. I really like the pressure of knowing that I can like make or break a group.
I love me some healers.
Yeah, exactly.
That's for sure. What is your least favorite race?
Oh man, I'm probably gonna get some crap for this, but I'd say elves by a slight margin.
Cool in my books.
So,
if you said Scar, I was gonna throw my headset across the room and leave.
No, I'm sure there's somebody out there has already told me off, but yeah, I'd say elves, because at least in my experience, they're frail and they die a lot. So I have nothing against.
They're too delicate.
Exactly. I have nothing against them personally, but if you're in my group as an elf, just don't die, please.
Well, we all know what happened. We know why essentially EverQuest Next failed. It's because those Takic elves were too stubborn, high-nosed, thought they could take on all those dragons, and they got slaughtered. And the world of EverQuest Next got destroyed, and that's why we don't have.
We never got to see it.
We're going to see it,
There you have it.
Yeah.
Plus, every role-playing game out there has elves. It's like
they're kind of a staple, but
they have
and
humans.
humans,
But humans are awesome.
Yeah, we are.
I'm just gonna smile and nod.
Yeah.
So, what's your least favorite class?
That's a little tougher. I feel like, at least as of the recording of this show, we don't really have enough information on the classes to really make a fair judgment. I would loosely predict that Dire Lord will actually be my least favorite class. Yeah. There you go.
God.
I'm generally somewhat skeptical of hybrid tanks, but
I hear you.
you know, that's just me.
Yeah.
I'm hoping they're not hybrids. But okay, so here's a tough question. If you had to choose between making an elf character and making a Dire Lord, which one would it be?
That's actually not too hard. I would go with the Dire Lord. I think I would. Yeah, I think
You went back up a rung in my book. As I say, you pick elf over Dire, we're done.
No. I think I could find a way to enjoy playing the Dire Lord, especially because then at least I'd have a chance of being able to keep myself alive.
Yeah.
True.
Exactly. That's true. And then the mechanics that you're most looking forward to in Pantheon.
I'd probably say it would be the climate system. It's something that actually I'm surprised we haven't really seen it in a big MMO yet, because it just makes a lot of sense, you know.
Exactly.
I think it's a really great way to add realism while also adding an increased level of difficulty. So I think it'll be really interesting to see the effect that has on adventures and the new like strategies that you have to come up with to prepare for it and also compensate for it.
Yeah, I'm yet to find an MMO that actually does the weather system and the climate systems correct yet.
Yeah.
And I think this is a good step in the direction. I think it's a good choice. If you could play Pantheon right now, what and where would you go and do?
Oh man. Well, assuming I was of an appropriate level, as soon as possible, I would go to the Tower of the Reckless Magician. So when I look at the Atlas, and the first thing that stands out about it is that it's really far from civilization. And I love the deep dungeon crawls that are really far away from any sort of civilization, because it just makes it feel so much more epic. Like, you not only have to prepare
and plan
for the destination, you also have to prepare for the journey even just to get there. And sometimes that's just as fun, you know? And then once you do get there, then the need to not die is so much more at the front of your mind, you know, because then when you die, you respawn halfway across the continent and you have to go back and get your corpse, and it just makes it makes it so much more intense.
But it's one of those things. It's one of those things, though. You know, it's why is it out there? It makes you want to go there. It automatically pulls you in because it's like it's miles away from everything else. So there has to be something really special in there.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's the other thing, is that's typically where.
Why did that crazy person build that tower there? Obviously to protect all his good stuff.
Right. I mean, and that brings up another good point about it, like, just the name, the Tower of the Reckless Magician, implies to me that like anything can happen there. You know, it reminds me a little bit maybe of like the Plane of Mischief in EQ1, where, you know, when we're in there in like alpha, the first people that get to that zone are just guaranteed to die because, you know, you have no idea what to expect. There could be traps coming out of anywhere, you know, and it would just be mayhem, and I think that would be a lot of fun.
Awesome.
So let's go and drag you away for a minute from all these tough Pantheon questions and give you a moment to tell us about one of your most standout or funniest moments in your previous MMO experience.
Okay. So at one point in my DDO career, kind of the mumblings kind of among the community on the forums and stuff were that gear didn't really, or rather skill didn't really matter anymore, and the only thing that really made a difference was the gear that you had. I think that's kind of like a common complaint among a lot of MMOs these days. But I didn't really want to believe it, and I was already a fairly notable figure on my server at the time, and so I decided that I wanted to publicly prove that theory wrong. So there was this raid zone in DDO called the Chronoscope, and it's basically this magical time machine that takes you back to a really important period in that area's history where the demon armies are invading, and you need to go back and fend off the demon armies and save the world. Okay, so I decided that not only was I going to solo heal this raid, I wanted to be the only cleric, the only healer. I was going to solo heal it, and I was going to do it naked. So,
Styling.
like, so my character, of course, not me in real life, but my character would wear no gear.
Well, you could, it's a choice matter.
Both.
You can do both.
Nobody would know,
Whatever.
I guess. Nobody would know. So my character was gonna wear no gear for the entirety of the raid. So it was just gonna be me, my knowledge of the game, and just pure mechanical skills. Because I felt like I could do it because I knew the raid pretty well, and I think I'd actually solo healed it a few times before that point, and nobody had ever done that before, obviously. So it was really intriguing to me. So I went to my guild and gathered up like the best players in my guild, and I told them like, hey guys, I got this crazy idea, and they're like, all right, let's do it. They were totally on board, which was good because I trusted them not to play like idiots, because I figured if people are making too many mistakes, it's just not even going to be possible. So
Yeah.
So we went for it, and it just worked perfectly. It was a lot of fun. It was really smooth. And so, you can imagine this naked dwarf like bouncing around the battlefield, like dodging the demon's attacks and just throwing out heals left and right. And so I'd say that's like both the funniest and the most standout moment in my career thus far.
Nice.
I feel like I need to clean my imagination with bleach now.
Yeah.
Right,
Oh,
so
Harry.
if you could pick 3 things to be implemented into Pantheon, what would they be and why?
Wow, that's a lot of power. Surprisingly, actually, most of my ideas don't really have anything to do with being a cleric, but regardless, the first thing would be these like finesse-based skills for rogues, like pickpocketing and lockpicking and stuff like that. I don't know how familiar you guys are with Skyrim, but lockpicking in Skyrim is a lot of fun to me, because it brings up this separate window, and you have to manipulate your lockpicking tools and turn the lock in just the right combination to actually unlock the door, and it just feels really good because it requires player dexterity in addition to character dexterity, and it's not so complicated that it's like inaccessible.
Yeah.
But it's like just that right balance. So it makes it so that it's so much more than just press the 7 key on your keyboard and wait a second and then see if your character unlocks the door. It just makes it just a little bit more interesting.
Very nice.
Like I said, I mean, I don't usually play rogues, but if they had that sort of thing in Pantheon, I very well might play a rogue.
Me too.
The second thing would be shields that can be equipped in your main hand. So I know that this
shields!
is exactly. So I know that this is like
I'm gonna meet you by the flagpole after school.
So I know
I
this
got
is
you
like
back.
this.
I got
All
you
right,
back.
great. Clearly, this is a debate that goes on the forums, but it would just be so awesome to me to be like bashing faces left and right, and then the very next second you can turtle up and have like the ultimate defense. That just seems like the best tanking solution.
Can I
think it would,
just quickly butt in here?
yeah.
Smarty, when you watch this, you're gonna hate us. Those shields is gonna be a thing in a month from now.
I'm telling you, anybody.
I'm sorry, but I don't want battles to last for like 2 hours because there's 2 shields up there the whole time. Bang, bang, bang. So yeah.
And don't blame the players. It's a dev idea.
Well, I can tell you this though: if they ever decide to give dual shields a chance, I will try it. But it needs to be engaging. It needs to be entertaining, and it can't be overly defensive, like say leveling in WoW as a protection warrior, because that is gouge your eyes out with a fork boring. That's my main concern.
Yeah.
I'd say that's a legitimate concern. A lot of people, their argument is that, how could a warrior with 2 shields do enough damage to hold aggro? It wouldn't be viable. And those people, I don't think that's a really legitimate argument, because anybody that says that, though, has clearly never been hit in the face with a large metal object, in my opinion.
Well, I think a lot of those people are simply stuck on how older MMOs would put a lot of emphasis on raw DPS for aggro.
Right. Without
knowing the actual aggro mechanics of Pantheon, it's very easy to get stuck in that, because I know I do at times.
Right. Yeah, that's fair. But anyway, the third thing.
3 shields.
The third thing would actually probably be bard instruments that double as weapons. This one's a little bit of a stretch, but I think it's cool. So, of course, rather than having to constantly switch back and forth between instruments and weapons, you could just have one item that serves 2 purposes. So
like a guitar, where the strings break and then just
That's I'm imagining like a loop with a blade along the edge of the body that could be used as an axe, or maybe even just a loop that's just reinforced and you could just smack people with it like a club. Yep, and then
just don't have a flute with a dagger that doubles as a dagger.
A spear.
Well, that's another idea, but you'd have to have the tip on the other end, obviously. And there's probably some people, that would be like, oh, but then the strings on the lute would get knocked out of tune, yada yada yada. But
it's refreshing though, to see that there's others out there that have the same mindset as us. That we try and view the MMO industry as a whole with an open mind to try and bring forward new, refreshing ideas. And it's good to see others out there like yourself that seem to have the same approach. And I think this is what we are in dire need of as a community, to revolutionize and bring this genre back to its glory and into the next stage of the evolution chain.
Yeah, let's face it, bards, especially I'm going from my EverQuest 1 days here, bards have enough on their plate. Let's take weapon swapping away, make their life a little easier, please.
Yeah, definitely.
So, what is your number 1 thing from the game Tenants that stand out, and why?
Yeah, definitely a belief that an immersive world requires intelligent inhabitants. I feel like NPC AI in MMOs, which is a lot of acronyms, by the way, so non-player character artificial intelligence in massively multiplayer online role-playing games has been really far behind for a long time, in my opinion.
And that's why there's acronyms.
Yeah. We're about 10 years behind.
Right.
About 10 years behind, if I had to guess.
Oh yeah, it quite often I find myself just kind of scratching my head because the NPCs are just plain stupid. And that just makes situations a lot less interesting, a lot less engaging, and it has a tendency to make it feel more like a game and less than an actual living, breathing world that interacts with you.
A nice choice. So this next question is obviously related in some form and fashion. It's basically from the Pantheon difference. So from what is your number 1 thing from the Pantheon difference that you want to see in game the most?
Yeah, I mean, of course, like you said, it would be the NPC dispositions for pretty much the same reason. I'm excited to see how the dispositions play out, because I feel like it's such a great way to force the community to come up with new strategies and just dynamic things like that, because of course as your opponents get smarter, then the players have to get smarter to overcome it too. And I think that's just a really great way to push people and keep them thinking a little bit more.
Yeah,
Let's
that would
face
be
it,
great. Sorry, go Lex.
Well, let's face it, it's boring when it's like, okay, the first two mobs of this entrance, this one heals, pull him off to the side so he doesn't heal this guy. You know, you can't do that with the disposition. It could be anything.
Yeah.
So keep you on your toes.
Yep.
If you could spend a single day or a day with a single person at VR, who would it be and why?
It's another really good question. I mean, it's got to be Brad, though. It's got to be, right? Like,
Yeah.
Hey, do not steal my starstruck. I'm the one who loves Brad. Lex has said it.
One of these days, you're gonna see Arnella with a tattoo that just says Brad.
I mean, he just seems like such a reasonable guy, but also really passionate. And that's how I am too. So I really enjoy people like that. There is actually it's actually a really fascinating interview with Brad by a guy named Boogie2988 on YouTube.
Yeah.
And it goes into kind of when like EverQuest was in its inception, leading to Vanguard, and then how Vanguard kind of started to fall apart. But then, of course, he turned that around, and now he's, leading the most anticipated MMO in the genre. And that gave me really a lot of respect for him, and thinking, hearing about kind of what his thought process was through all that, I felt like I could kind of really relate to how he solved those problems, stuff like that. So if you haven't seen the interview yet, you should definitely go check it out.
It shows Brad, as one of us. He's not behaving like I'm a developer for a game. I am God. He's a normal, person that has a passion for games, that has a reasonable understanding to what the community sees and wants to have, and he can get frustrated as well. That's what I think stands out for Brad a lot. When you look at the industry in a whole, you look at all these other major companies out there and all these huge names in that industry. Brad is one of the most down-to-earth guys, I think, and he's one of those guys you'd take out to go and have a beer with.
Yeah,
and I think he's fine with it.
And he certainly does have a vision. I mean, all the way from way back then, he said, this is the way I think an MMO should be done.
Yep.
This is the way we think the community likes MMOs, and this is what I'm going to try and put out. And maybe it failed with Vanguard through other methods, but he's still pushing that vision forward.
Yeah, he sticks to his guns, and he's very honest.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah.
So, are you main for the game, or are you an altaholic?
I definitely focus on my main. I'd much rather be like really, really good at just one thing than mediocre at several things. Now, like that's
hug
okay.
you.
That's not to say that that altaholics aren't valuable. They are, but for me, I just find much more enjoyment when I just pick one thing and just go pedal to the metal with it.
Alts have their place. I won't deny.
Oh, absolutely. Like when you play like one character really intensely, inevitably, you almost always get burned out. So I will still absolutely roll up some alts just to keep things interesting, switch it up every once in a while. And I also think it's really valuable to be able to see the world from the perspective of another class or another race too. I think that makes it advantageous when I'm on my main.
With understanding.
And the thing is as well for the community or the guild or your guild or whatever, alts hold a value as well, because sometimes maybe the guy that normally tanks for you or heals for you isn't there or is indisposed for that period, so you'll have somebody log on to an alternative character, take on that role and jump in with you guys, so it holds value. Or even helping a friend return to the game and help him get caught up to speed. So that's where I can see a good use for alts, but I'm definitely down with your answer, main for game.
Yeah,
Yep.
the vast
I
majority.
think all of us
time.
agree with that over here. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's something satisfying to knowing that when you play this class, you are literally a master of it
Mm.
versus being a jack of all trades. And I mean, it's a feeling that it's very hard to replicate in a lot of games because, let's face it, a lot of the modern games are so boring. You roll new characters just for the off chance that it might feel fresh again.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So what is your guild preference?
Usually I want my guilds to feel more like a family, because when you get to know your guildies really well and it becomes more just like hanging out with friends, that becomes for me a really big part of my social life, and that's what motivates me to log on in the first place.
Yeah, exactly.
Now of course, like I want to be surrounded by really skilled players too that help me to become a better player. But first and foremost, it's more of like a socializing group rather than just simply a means for progression.
Yeah, good answer. Very nice. What other interests outside of gaming do you have?
I have quite a few. Probably like top 5 that come to mind, again in no particular order, would be kickboxing, playing drums, playing guitar, poker, and racing remote control cars.
We have a bard in real life. Very nice, very nice. Do you have a ritual for longer playing sessions, and what are they?
Not really for like long playing sessions specifically. I did develop this really strange habit when I was playing DDO that like anytime at the beginning of the day I would have to log into my main first. Even if I was planning on just playing an alt that day, I don't know, like it felt like I was cheating on my main if I didn't like log into him first. I guess I felt like I needed to know that he still cared. As you guys that play your mains, you might be able to relate to that. Like it's weird, but that was
Well,
There's a video.
It's also a case of even though say you go to sleep for 8 hours and you want to play your alt, you're kind of like, well, I still really missed my main. I just don't want to play it.
Have you guys seen that video from EverQuest 2 where it's called? You have to go onto YouTube. It's called "Don't Delete Me." So this guy basically logs onto an old character and he starts talking to her, and talking about I need to delete you, I need to make room, I want to get a new character, blah, yada yada yada. So she starts fighting back and burns his eyebrows off, and says, oh, but I can do all this cool stuff, and at the end basically she kills him and sits in front of the PC playing EverQuest 2 herself. So it kind of relates to that. I understand exactly where you're coming from. I tend to do that all the time. It's the main first. You're my passion, where I put all my blood and sweat and hours into, and out of respect, boom.
Exactly. Like, yeah, even if it's just for like a few minutes to organize my bank or whatever, like it just, I don't know, I just got to do it.
Feels better after that, yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm not the only one.
So, here's the $1 million question. Cats or dogs?
I like them both a lot, but I think in general dogs are more useful. So I'd go with dogs.
And happier.
Yeah, I had a dog. Speaking of guilds, I'll tie this together. I had a dog, but unfortunately at one point I came upon some hard times and wasn't really able to take care of my dog as well as I would have liked. But fortunately, I had my 2 best friends from my guild in DDO were kind enough to actually adopt my dog.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so it was just a really great situation for everyone because they're happy because they wanted a dog, and the dog's happy because she was able, because they take really good care of her, and I'm happy because I know that the dog's happy, and I still go visit them every once in a while too. So again, it's that sort of thing where those relationships that you build with your guild that like just live on forever, even if you're still not playing the game.
So,
fantastic.
So Josh already asked the $1 million question. And the final question that Josh is going to ask you is obviously going to be the one that's priceless.
And it's obviously, who is the VoT host with the most?
Oh no. So,
don't worry. I expect to lose.
Well, I'm gonna be objective as possible, because I assume that you mean it's like the host with the most Twitter followers, which last I checked would be Yar.
Yeah, we'll go with that answer.
Yeah.
He is literally the host with the most.
So, you got anything you want to say to the community out there? Final words.
To the community, I would say keep sticking together. I think it's vital to the health of the game. It doesn't matter how good the game is; it's the community, that really makes or breaks it. I think we all kind of understand that, but it's important to remember that on a day-to-day basis, whether it's on the forums or once we're in the game. Debate is a good thing. It's a healthy thing to produce new ideas. But like you were talking about earlier, it's just really important to keep an open mind as well, and not assume that your way is the right way, and to keep listening to each other and helping each other out. That's what I would say.
And to VR.
To VR, it's pretty simple. Just keep doing what you're doing, because clearly, they're doing it right. So I think as long as VR keeps, sticking to their core values and listening to the fans where applicable and just delivering on their promises, I think that there will be nothing but good times ahead.
Cool. So you also plan on streaming the game itself, and we'll have the link in the video set up. So talk a bit about that, what you plan to do, and yeah.
Yeah, probably, hopefully on launch day, I'll start streaming. It's gonna be Bazgrim TV on, so you can follow me on Twitch and Twitter, cool. Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, all that good stuff to stay in the loop when we get to that point. It's gonna be focused on the game. I know, like, a lot of Twitch streams have all these like glitzy overlays, and it tends to draw the focus away from the game. So yeah, it's just gonna be all about learning as much about the game as we can, and having a good time while doing it, of course.
Awesome.
So, I'll be watching.
Yep, definitely. Hit us up once you're set up, and we'll add you to the website and everything.
Cool.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure having you on board. Hopefully, other people out there won't feel afraid now. We don't bite. We're very welcoming.
It's off camera.
And warm-hearted. So yeah. We'll speak to you next time. I think we'll definitely try and get you back on at some point.
Sure, yeah, that'd be great.
Once we know more about the game. If you ever happen to have a day off on a Thursday and want to jump in and chat and talk with us, feel free to do that.
Yeah, no, definitely.
So with that, guys, that is show 60. Player Q&A with Bazgrim. Check his posts out, follow him in the forums. All the links for his Twitter, etc. will be added again for you to view in this video. And we will see you the Thursday, let me have a look, 20th. We will be seeing you guys on the 27th again with the next show. So with that, have a good night, and see you next time.
Stay safe, people.
Bye-bye, guys.
Hey.